Hello, my fellow coders. Welcome back to Think in Code. And today we are going to start with a new episode, parameters and return values. Last time we learned about function, how to define them, how to call them. Now today we are going to talk about parameters and return values. So basically, parameters are placeholder in a function definition that receives values when the function is called. Now, they are flexible and reusable while they can also take input. Their primary task is to take input inside a function. Now, let me give you an example. If we have a definition as greet and we print hello world and we greet hello world. See, we got the hello world. But what if we need to greet three different people? For example, let's greet Jake, Paul, and Claire. Now, in the first greet, I can write Jake and I can copy this and paste and we can change the name to Paul and we can change the name to Claire, Paul and Claire. So we'll have to mention it three times. Greet Paul, greet Clara. So now, as you can see, we have got the result. But so what is the use of writing three different functions if we have to do it like this? Because, well, if we have to write three different functions, we could just do print and that would be a lot easier and faster. So that's why in Python, we have something called parameters that we pass into a function. For example, name here. So name is a parameter and we can use this parameter or you can think of it as a variable inside a function. Now what I did is use this name inside here, and if we print it, read, and we pass in an argument like Paul, and second we can greet John and Paul, John. Yeah, so we can greet Claire here, and this way if we print it, as you can see, we got three different names now because we're using an parameter with an argument. So arguments are the actual value of this parameters, and parameters are a definition that lets function get an input. Like it said here, parameters are placeholders in a function definition that receive values when the function is called. Now, when we get input, we can make our functions more flexible and we can make it more reusable as it's given here. Now, moving forward, look at the syntax we have for parameters. Parameters, def, greet, name. So like we did, def, greet, name. And parameters should always be inside this two parentheses. And what if we have two parameters to pass? So we will give them 17, 18, and 16. So these are the A's. Now we can print in F string, you are years old. And we pass in another argument here, another parameter here after the name is. Now if we run it, as you can see, hello Paul, you're 17 years old. Now what we did here is multiple parameters. Before this, we were using single parameters. Now we are using multiple parameters. And you need to be cautious about the sequence you write this parameters on. As you can see, Paul is name, but if we change this to 17 and we change this to Paul, if we print it, you can see it will change as well. Hello 17, you are Paul years old. So that is not how we want to write it. As you have written the parameters, in the same sequence you have to write our arguments. Sometimes in some cases, users does not want to give us their information and we have to make some forms optional. So print f you live in address. So we have address here. Let's assume Paul wants us to get his address. We'll say he lives in Tokyo, and for John he lives in Berlin. But Clara, she does not want to give us her address because, well, she doesn't feel very safe with giving us her address. So we get an error here. We are missing one required argument, as you can see here. Now what we can do is equals to capital. Now what this is, it's a default argument. So when a user does not want to give us the information, we'll put it as a default or optional. So if we run it, as you can see, hello Paul, you are 17 years old, you live in Tokyo. Hello John, you are 18 years old, you live in Berlin. Hello Claire, you are 16, you live in capital. Because we did not give her an address, that's why Python gave it a default argument that we had already passed inside a parameter. To give it a default argument, all you need to do is parameter equals to and whatever the argument you want to, default argument you want to give here. So that is how you do default arguments or default parameters in here. But if we had something like New York, then if we print it, see, Claire got a new address to New York. So this will run whenever you don't pass an argument related to address. That's when this will run. This will be really helpful when you are creating an optional field in a form. Now, let's learn about return values. Till now, what we have done is print the values. What if we don't want to print the values, we want to do something else with the values? Let's say the question is to add 16 after the input, after the addition of whatever user provide us. with. So according to this, we have to add a 16 after the addition of whatever the user provided us with. So let's say user had provided us with A as 19 and B as 12. What we can do here is def add A comma B. We are using two arguments, and then we are going to return this A plus B. Now we will presume that sum equals to add A comma B. So this variable will store the result this function will give us. Now if we just print sum, we got 31 because sum stored the return value or the value provided by this specific function we ran. So this function would return A plus B, 19 plus 12, that is 31, and that's why the sum got it, because sum is the one that called the function. Now, as the question said, what we can do is user equals to sum plus, we needed to add 16 and print user comma sum. So if we print this, we got 47 and 31. Sum being this, the return addition of this, and the return would be we added a 16 later on. So this helps us make changes to the value returned by a function. As you can see, return sends a value back to whoever called the function. Without return, function give back none. Return helps back the function to return back the value whatever you have given it to calculate, and it captures the result and stores. We can capture the result and store it in some place, as you can see here as well. Result equals to add 3 comma 5, and then you can use this variable to do anything at all. So as you can see, what we did was store a value inside result. We stored the value of this function provided, and then we can print the value or change the value into something else and print it. As you can see, we first returned just the value that was stored by the function, then we returned we added something into it and then returned the value. Now this is really useful when you are doing A's and other stuff using functions. Now, so with and without return. So without return, what we can do is def add comma A comma B, print A plus B. It just prints the stuff, right? And well, if we want to reuse it, we get none, so no use. So if you can see here, if we don't return it, we just print A plus B and we print the result. What we get is none. As you can see, print result none, but this helps us get this. But when we store it in a result, we get none. So that's what it said here. Just prints will give us value none. If we don't use return, we can't reuse the results. So with return, what we can do is sends it back. The function sends back the result, and we can reuse it again and again and change in a results freely. It is clean, chainable, and it can truly be reusable. Now, key rules to remember about parameters and returns are: number one, parameter versus argument. Parameter is the name in the definition, and argument is the value you pass when calling. What this means is this are arguments, the one when we send while we are calling the function, and this are parameters, what the function receives. That's why we need to remember the difference between parameters and argument. Arguments are when you are calling the functions, are used when you are calling the functions, and parameter is the name in the definition of the function when you define the function. Now, two, order matters. Like I said, when it comes to order, it matters a lot. If we look at it here, def user equals to name comma is, print user info, and then print is. And if we pass user name as 16 and is as Paul, you can see name 15 is Paul. So order matters. The order is whatever order you have written the parameters in, the argument should be passed in the same order. So here it would be Paul, and here it will be 15 because, well, the name and the age. So user info name Paul and age 15. That's why the order matters. And return will always exit the function. You cannot write anything after the return, after you return a value from a function. If you say return true here, return true, and you try to write print health and we use user, we can't get nothing. So even if we print users, right, print user, all we can get is true because it returned true, and we can't get print health because nothing will run after the return. Return is the end of the function. As it says here, return exits the function. Once Python hits return, the function stops, and code after return in the same block won't run. Now, none is the default return. So we talked about what return is, and if you don't write anything here, it will return none. So as you can see here, print user. So for in default, it will always return none. So none, we talked about it in variables in data types. You can go check it out. Now, here are some quick practice questions that you can do to challenge yourself. There are 3 of them. You should check it out. I'll link the notes and the questions in the description and the pinned comments. So check it out. Now, let's summarize what we have learned today. We learned how to pass data into a function with parameters. We now know how to use multiple parameters and default parameters in a function. And we learned about return values from functions with return. So how we can return a value in a function. And we learned how to capture the returned value and reuse it in other ways. So that is it for today. And in the next video, we'll be learning about scope and lifetime variables. There are two types of variables, local and global, and we'll learn all about it in the next video. And if you want to keep learning, please do subscribe. And don't forget to comment if you want me to improve anything at all in the video. Like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy coding, keep coding.